So Poco's budget-friendly smartphone offerings are expanding rapidly to the point where it's getting a wee bit confusing. I recently reviewed the Poco X4 Pro, which was a pretty solid budget-friendly smartphone with some decent specs all around. And now we've got the Poco X4 GT, which is apparently aimed at anyone who uses their phone mostly for gaming and entertainment. And to confuse matters, this boasts very different specs to the Poco X4 Pro. This gaming model is powered by the Dimensity 8100 chipset from MediaTek. It serves up a 144Hz LCD panel and offers completely different camera tech too. But is the Poco X4 GT actually any good at kicking boredom right in the crotch? Well, let's whip it on out of the box, take you on a full tour, and for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do plug subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Alright, so here we go again. First up, what's in this lovely yellow box? Well, there's one Poco X4 GT smartphone, a lovely bit of 67-watt fast charge adapter action, Type-C USB cable. Got a screen protector chucked in there as well, which I think should come pre-installed on the smartphone, but because this is an early review unit, it's just bundled in the box. And hip hip huzzah, you do indeed get a bundled condom case to wrap around your Poco X4 GT and keep it all snug and safe. And that is it, Mother Hubbards, everything you will find in the Poco X4 GT box. Get in, you bugger. Alrighty, so here in all of its glory is that X4 GT phone, and gotta say, got a heavy budget smartphone vibe already. It's a pretty simple, straightforward design, no real frills or flair to speak of, which, to be fair, is possibly a good thing, because sometimes Poco goes a bit over the top. Bezels surrounding that display are a little bit on the chunky side, especially down below, but nothing too horrific. It's a 6.6-inch smartphone, so it does feel fairly big in the hand anyway. It is a 20.5:9 stretched aspect ratio, so it does feel quite sort of thin and tall, so reasonably comfortable to clutch. And that's despite the fact that Poco hasn't gone for a curved frame for the X4 GT. Instead, you've got those flat edges, which are pretty common for budget-friendly phones in 2022. Weighs 200 grams, so it's got quite the heft to it, that's for sure. And this is the basic bog standard boron black model, but you can also grab the Poco X4 GT in blue and silver if you want something a bit more vibrant. It is just a basic plastic finish around on the arse end, and it is starting to get a bit greasy and grimy already, as you can see there. That surface marred with prints and this nasty finger goo. Fairly subtle branding around the back, so nothing too horrific, and that camera chassis doesn't jut too far from the arse end either, so it shouldn't be troublesome. There's no official rating for water resistance or anything, but the Poco X4 GT does have Gorilla Glass 5 up front, and you've got that screen protector chucked in as well. As for the rest of the phone, nothing particularly thrilling. You've got your SIM tray and you've got a speaker down here below, as well as a Type-C USB port. And over at the top end, you've got another speaker, stereo speaker setup, and you've also got a headphone jack, way! So now we've got the Poco X4 GT all set up. Let's have a bit of an explore of the software, and it is Android 12 with MiUI 13 slathered on top, exactly like pretty much every other Xiaomi and Poco smartphone right now. Thankfully, MiUI doesn't mess around too heavily with Google these days, so you'll find it's a fairly stock Android vibe as far as these Chinese launchers go. You got an apps tray, all that good stuff, but you've also got extra bonus bits like a control center chucked in, which is actually genuinely helpful, even though it just completely rips off good old iOS. One of the best things about MiUI is the fact that it chucks in lots of extra customization options on top of Android, so you can easily mess around with all kinds of stuff, including the usual icon packs. You got plenty of themes to download, you got the wallpaper carousel feature, lots of stuff. No always on display, unfortunately, on the Poco X4 GT, as there's no OLED panel here. That's definitely something I'm going to be grumbling about later. MiUI has a few issues though, one of which is the fact that it comes piled with so much crapware to begin with. TikTok, you've got Tile Fun, which I've still never played despite ripping the piss out of it in every single video. LinkedIn, Zoom, etc. Thankfully, the vast majority of all of this stuff you can uninstall, so you just got to spend a little bit of time at the beginning just setting up the smartphone and getting rid of all of this crap. And the other small problem with MiUI smartphones in general is the fact that those updates don't come particularly thick and fast. So you will get security updates, but they might be a month or two behind some rivals. And as far as OS updates go, well, it'll probably get an upgrade to Android 13 later this year, or maybe even start of next year, depending on how long it takes them to get around to it. So if that's going to be an issue for you, you might want to look at like OnePlus or something instead. To actually unlock the Poco X4 GT, it is an edge-mounted fingerprint sensor built into that power button right there. It's my favorite kind of fingerprint sensor, generally more dependable than those ruddy in-display efforts, although even those optical ones are getting better these days, to be fair. And as usual, this is coupled up with a bit of face unlock action as well, which again seems pretty responsive and dependable. Pretty handy if your hands are, you know, all sweaty and disgusting. You've got a choice of 128 or 256 gigs of storage with the Poco X4 GT. Sadly, not expandable via micro SD. As you can see, the SIM tray has space for 2 SIMs there. It's a double-sided affair, but no memory card action. Now, the Poco X4 GT sports a mighty 6.6-inch LCD display. It's sadly not OLED technology. And that is a real shame because it means the Poco X4 GT doesn't boast those deep blacks, that nice strong sharp contrast that you would get from an OLED panel, especially annoying considering this phone is supposed to be geared towards gaming and entertainment. All the same, this isn't a bad screen by any means. You've got nice wide viewing angles on there, and it's pleasingly punchy when you boost the brightness all the way up to the maximum level, so absolutely fine for outdoors use. And again, while you don't quite get the same rich tones that you do from an OLED panel, the colours are reasonably poppy here on the Poco X4 GT. It's a Full HD Plus resolution panel, 2460 by 1080, so images are crisp, whether you're browsing your photos, playing games, or kicking back with a bit of Disney Plus. And you do actually have Dolby Vision support here as well, but obviously you can't expect quite as strong visuals as you would do again from an OLED smartphone. The selfie orifice up top is centrally positioned and not exactly super tiny, so it does intrude on the action when you go full screen, but nothing too horrendous. Dive on into the Poco X4 GT's display settings and you've got all the usual shenanigans like reading modes. You can mess around with the colours, make them a little bit warmer if you like. And you can also meddle with the refresh rate, which actually tops off at 144 Hz here on the X4 GT. Good news if your game of choice actually supports that, and it's actually got a 7-stage dynamic switch in the default setting. This can raise or lower the refresh rate through 7 separate stages, otherwise you can custom choose one of 3 different stages, 60, 90 or 144 Hz. The higher that refresh, the faster it will sap the battery, so it is best just keeping it on the default recommended level. And this will automatically bump it up when you are actually using a supported app. And you've got a stereo speaker setup here on the Poco X4 GT, those speakers mounted on the flat edges above and below the display. So let's chuck up the volume, see if it's any good. Absolutely swamped with tech influencer types gushing high praise from every orifice. So not exactly superpowers on that top volume. It's not going to be perforating any eardrums anytime soon, that's for sure. And a slight imbalance between the speakers as well. That bottom one's definitely got a bit more power compared with the top one. Although that's only really noticeable when you muffle the speakers, and thankfully when I have been clutching the phone like so to do a bit of gaming or just watching some movies or whatever, I found that I haven't, so far at least, smothered those speakers at all. You've got a good bit of Dolby Atmos smarts on there as well, set to the dynamic preset, so it can change up the audio settings based on what you're actually doing at the time. Otherwise you do have a good bit of equalizer action. Lots of presets you can play around with, otherwise you can manually go to town, bump up that bass. And as mentioned before, not only do you have a headphone jack, you've also got Bluetooth 5.3 streaming support. So while I am slightly lamenting the fact you don't get an OLED display on this thing, the Poco X4 GT certainly makes up for it with its audio chops. Now, where this Poco blower really impresses and where the budget has clearly been spent is the performance, because this thing is powered by MediaTek's fresh new Dimensity 8100 chipset, as also found packed inside of the Realme GT Neo 3. And that is backed here on the Poco X4 GT by 8 gigs of DDR5 RAM, so it's not particularly surprising that performance is beefier than a cow orgy. So basically, if you are a big fan of mobile gaming, you want something that's got some serious grunt, but your budget is tighter than a starfish's sphincter, well, the Poco X4 GT should be pretty high up your list. Not only do you have that top performance, but you've also got all reliable game turbo mode as well, which you can load up like so. This allows you to optimize the performance of your game to make sure that no other apps are chugging away in the background, stealing your resources, using your Wi-Fi, anything like that. And when you actually load up your game as well, you can quickly drag out the Game Turbo menu at any point, just a quick swipe from the corner like so. This gives you access to all kinds of great tools. So for instance, you can quickly free up the memory if you find that your game is struggling for whatever reason. Frankly, don't think that's going to be happening on this bad boy anytime soon. You've got like the Do Not Disturb, you can record the game in action as well. And you've also got the Performance Boost tool as well, which is pretty handy. And of course, my personal favorite, the voice changer.
Don't forget to subscribe and ding that notifications bell.
And my usual test for proper gaming smartphones with a good bit of grunt is Genshin Impact with maxed out graphic settings, the frame rate bumped up to 60 FPS. And on these settings, the Poco X4 GT did not struggle in the slightest. I can't remember seeing any little drops in frame rate, any judders, any particular issues whatsoever, even when things got crazy intense. So this phone should be able to happily smash through any title on the Google Play Store. You've also got the Liquid Cool Tech 2.0 setup. Sounds very posh indeed. This includes not 5, not 6, but 7 layers of graphite. Whoop whoop. And either the Liquid Cool Tech or just the general efficiency of the Dimensity 8100 chipset certainly seemed to do the job, because the Poco X4 GT did not get toasty even after copious amounts of Genshin Impact action. Beyond the game turbo features though, there's no specific gaming features here on the Poco X4 GT, unlike the Poco F4 GT, for instance. These smartphones are really starting to stack up now, which did come with a couple of shoulder buttons built in there, which were incredibly helpful for the likes of your Call of Duties, your PubGs, where you got lots of on-screen buttons to play around with, and basically it's just a mess. But all the same, at this sort of budget price point, cannot fall to the gaming experience here. And you've also got 5G support, courtesy once again of that Dimensity 8100 chipset. It's dual 5G standby, so both of those SIM slots are supported. You've got full Wi-Fi 6 support on here as well, and certainly no issues there whatsoever. All 15, 16 gigs or whatever of Genshin Impact came down super fast. And the battery is a ruddy whopper in this thing as well. You've got a 5080 mAh capacity cell packed into that plastic frame. And yeah, if you are a big fan of that Genshin Impact or some other proper power sapping Android titles, well, you might have to give it a quick boost up in the middle of the day or something like that. But otherwise, I find get around sort of 6 to 7 hours of screen on time with mixed use on a single charge. And if you are playing things like PubG and Call of Duty Mobile, which tend to drain the battery not quite as quickly, then no worries, you can get gaming for a good few hours on this thing. Not have to worry too much about charging up, although the charging is bloody nippy as well. You got 67 watt wide charging support, no wireless charging though. And last up, my lovelies, the camera tech. And what you've got here is a triple lens setup slapped on the back end of the Poco X4 GT, spearheaded by a 64 megapixel primary sensor. And I wouldn't expect too much from the camera tech on the Poco X4 GT. It is fairly basic, simple stuff. Although, as usual, that camera app is, of course, absolutely rammed full of bonus modes that you can play around with, including a full-on pro mode. No RAW support, but all of the usual toggles and other bits that you can play around with. Got a full-on portrait mode, night mode, and lots more if you click into the more section, obviously. And that 64 meg main camera is pretty basic on the auto settings. Whatever the lighting conditions are, your shots can look a little bit soft or blurred if your hand and your subject aren't completely still. But colours are well captured even in more ambient light. The focus here is a bit dumb, sadly. It definitely struggled when the subject wasn't front and center, often latching onto the background instead, so I had to manually take control sometimes. Otherwise, with a bit of due care and diligence, you'll get some decent looking snaps. The portrait mode works well 9 times out of 10, just occasionally get a little bit of jank in there. And as for proper low light shots, well, they are right out. Even with the night mode, you'll find that everything is just soft and blurry and a bit minging. You do also have an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle shooter, which again is pretty basic bog standard stuff if you want a more pulled back view. Otherwise, the final lens is your obligatory 2 megapixel macro effort. As for your home movies, where you can capture these at 4K resolution at 30 FPS. And again, it's pretty basic stuff, so don't expect too much. You hopefully won't be disappointed. It's fine for simple shareable clips. And then flip to the front and it is a basic 20 megapixel selfie shooter. Again, pretty simple, straightforward stuff. Shots do tend to look quite soft again in indoor, more ambient light, but yeah. And if you do a bit of Skyping or Zooming, or you just want to shoot a vlog of your face talking for whatever reason, then you can shoot full HD resolution video with that selfie shooter, either 30 or 60 frames per second with adequate enough audio capture too. And that right there in a nutshell is the Poco X4 GT, and I've got no idea why I've started talking like a pirate, or am I gonna edit this bit out? Am I bollocks? But as you can see, they're packing some supreme performance. That is definitely the highlight of this budget blowout right there. So if you are going to be gaming, you don't have too much to spend on your next smartphone, well, definitely give it a squint. You got fantastic battery life as well, strong audio smarts. It's a shame it's not an OLED display, and of course the camera's a wee bit cack as well, so just bear that in mind. As long as those are low down in your priority list, then all good. But anyhow, it'd be great to hear what you guys reckon of the Poco X4 GT and the myriad of other Poco smartphones that have landed in 2022. I can't bloody keep up with them. And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do plug subscribe, ding that notifications bell, have yourselves a bloody lovely rest of the week. Cheers everyone, love you!